deal of around 60 million quid.
There's always a transfer saga talking in our tabloidese here.
United fans will be going, what are you talking about? They're worth more than that.
They need to do it pretty quickly.
Yeah, Mikel Pulis.
Yeah, no, I'm not having it. No, but we've got a bit of a Mexican standoff here, right? Because
welcome back once again to SunSport's Transfers Exposed. Whether you're listening or watching, I'm Will Pugh and I'm joined by the Sun's Deputy Head of Sport, Dean Scoggins. Dino, we're back again 2 days after our last episode here on Transfers Exposed. It is non-stop. Yeah, the second window of the summer has opened up again, and this it's funny how the window ebbs and flows, doesn't it, with sort of rumours and stories and deals being done and talked about. We're kind of, the end of this week is sort of one of those slightly more fallow times when it's a bit of like a standoff period. Want to talk about Viktor Gyokeres. We didn't manage to cram him in on Tuesday. Now, bit of a confusing situation. Just sum up the situation for us.
Well, I think this is the one that's going to turn into the summer saga. There's always a transfer saga talking in our tabloidese here.
It fits nicely on the back page, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
saga.
Yeah. It's the transfer saga of the summer, and obviously Arsenal involved. And yeah, look, I mean, we had there's a dispute over fees. There's the agent saying one thing, the club saying another. He's got a buyout clause north of 80 million. The club saying they won't hold them to that. Then the agent floated this 50 plus 8-ish figure.
That was the gentleman's agreement,
that Man United and Arsenal were obviously all over. But then Sporting saying, no, that's not going to be the case, and we're going to dig our heels in. So now it seems he's threatened to go on strike, which is very easy to do when you're sat on a beach in the summer somewhere, isn't it? And yeah, he sort of is one step away from Pascal Chimbonda's transfer request in the sock at the moment, I think. Yeah, it seems that it's Arsenal is his preferred destination, or the most likely destination anyway. And it's a case of whether Arsenal go down the Sesko route or the Gyokeres route. And I suppose it's a nice position to be in for Arsenal. Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? So Dave Kidd's main spread in the paper this morning on Thursday: strike a deal fast. Arteta needs new number 9 settled for Arsenal's nightmare start to the season. Obviously, the fixtures out this week. Arsenal have got United away, Leeds at home, Liverpool away, Forest at home, Man City at home, Newcastle away.
You're not going to expect me to comment on Arsenal's fixtures, are you? Surely. I mean,
that is a minging first 6.
Yeah, I mean, they have to play the champions, or we have to play the champions twice, but the champions don't, sort of thing.
We're lucky this isn't fixtures exposed. That coming from a man whose Tottenham team
you play everyone. You play 38 games. You play everyone
twice.
The
first 11 games of the season.
Pretty
it's
straightforward.
It's the anyway, let's talk about Arsenal, mate. Right. So the latest sort of development if you like, is if Gyokeres actually, by sort of being quite bolshy about his desire for a move, has actually cut his nose off to spite his face. So one of the more recent developments is that he reportedly told his agent that to tell Arsenal that they were his first choice.
Yep.
The story goes that the agent went and said that to Arsenal, and they went, well, thanks very much, that's lovely what an ego boost for us as a club, but we actually very much like the look of 22-year-old Benjamin Sesko at RB Leipzig, and if they stop digging their heels in for the £85 million fee, would probably prefer to go that way.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a Mexican standoff here, right? Because the two players obviously both want to come to the Premier League. They both want the money to come to the Premier League, but they're contracted. They sign those contracts, right? Yep. So their clubs can dig the heels in for the money that they want to be, but both players know that they want the deal done quickly, so they beat the other one to it to get into Arsenal. Look, all jokes aside, what a really attractive prospect Arsenal are next year. They've got to go one better and win the title, and they need a striker to do that.
Yep.
And so then you've got Arsenal in this position where it seems good, but I think Dave Kidd is bang on, right? They need to do it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
This doesn't want to drag into July. They need one of these two on the tour, on the pre-season games, to get bedded in, ready to hit the ground running. This can't be dragging into August and then being a race for the window and then being an auction for the window. They do need it done. They can't. It will be hanging over Arsenal if they are not unveiling a number 9 sometime before they play in the Emirates Cup or whatever their first friendlies of the season are.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one, because it's in everyone's interest to do it quickly, other than the finance guys at the 3 clubs. That's a big point.
It is a bit of a sort of you kind of weighing the two things up, right? Because if you look at those first 6 games for Arsenal, I know the old you play everyone twice, but let's be honest, because of the nature of the transfer window, these things do, like you say, they do sometimes hang over into the season. If you've got a little bit more of a friendly start to the season, you can perhaps afford to let a new player take 5 or 6 games to bed in. This could be the difference. If you said, there's a difference between 3 or 4 points in those first 6 games against teams who are going to be their rivals, you almost weigh it against, all right, we might have to pay a couple of million more now.
Absolutely
right. But it's $3.5 million more prize money for a place.
Absolutely. Just get it done. Whichever one you want, just get it done. And look, Arsenal can beat, all joking aside about the fixtures, Arsenal can win all those games without Sesko or Gyokeres, right? Yeah, I mean, they've beaten those teams.
Liverpool away, Manchester City at home.
Yeah, they've beaten all those teams last year. There's, with the same squad, Havertz will be back, remember, as well.
Yeah.
They have the ability to win those. However, if they don't win those games without the striker, that's going to hang over them. Yeah. That'll be the reason that's pegged against it not happening. So, look, I'm sure they're working very, very hard behind the scenes, and Berta and Arteta will be sorting things out, and they'll know who they want, but they'll also know how much they want to pay. And I fully expect Arsenal to start the new season with one of those two, and it'll be down to them who they decide that is.
So 85 million, it looks like. So Sesko 22, 85 million. Leipzig digging their heels in a little bit more. He's got 4 years left on his deal to Gyokeres' 3 at Sporting Lisbon. It looks like early to mid-70s would be enough to get Gyokeres out of Sporting. Do you kind of, it certainly seems from Arsenal's position that Sesko is their preferred option. Do you kind of does that ring true for you?
Yeah, I think probably Sesko fits their current setup a bit better, but then we're assuming that the setup's going to be fairly similar to what it was last year. And, Arteta normally has a trick or two up his sleeve from a tactical point of view. So
it's normally being good at corners.
Well, yeah, there was that this year, but I wouldn't downplay that so much. But
Mikel Pulis.
Yeah, no, I'm not having it, no. And then, but yeah, I think he probably does fit them a little better from a profile perspective. But look, Gyokeres is just banging in goals, so either one of them is going to improve them massively.
Absolutely. Arsenal also interest in Nico Williams, who to have called off somewhat because that looks like he's going to Barcelona.
It does look like he's going to Barcelona, and if you are Catalan and you are playing in La Liga, even the law of the Premier League is probably not enough to stop you going to either Real Madrid or Barcelona. And obviously, as I say, the Catalan link means Barcelona is a little bit more, closer to home, if you like. Look, I think it's awful news for Arsenal that they're not going to get him. I was, wearing my Spurs hat for a moment when they were first linked to him. I thought, oh God, if he comes in instead of Martinelli, and then the striker comes in up front, you're thinking that is unbelievable front line. I think they do need. I'm not sure there are many Williams types players out there, but they need that type of left winger to replace Martinelli in this window as well.
Yeah, I think striker's obviously the main issue. If I'm honest, though, I agree. He would be the Rolls Royce option to replace him.
But why aren't they in for Eze?
Yeah.
I don't understand. 60 million release clause. I don't understand why they're not in for Eze.
Slightly different player, I guess.
But
from a tactical point of view.
Yeah, but from a dribbler, so a player that's going to beat players, a player that's going to cause problems and draw defenders towards them to free up space for other people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, he would have been, don't get me wrong, he would have been number 1 on the shopping list for anybody on the left-hand side. But yeah, they now need to think pretty quickly, and I'm sure they are. I'm sure they've got something else lined up. We'll do some digging. We'll find out next time.
Exactly. It's not going to take a lot to improve on Gabriel Martinelli, though. I don't think.
Let's not be too harsh on Martinelli. He's a good player, but he's not going to win you a title from left wing.
I think, put it this way: if Arsenal sort the striker issue out, the next glaringly obvious,
is that one.
The sore thumb standing out, is the Gabriel Martinelli shaped one. Dino, talk to me a little bit about Manchester United. Marcus Rashford, obviously, there's lots of talk around him, around the Newcastle links. Eddie Howe being a big fan, we've covered it extensively in the paper and online this week, of course, but you might have a little bit of an insight about some more goings on at Manchester United.
Yeah, well, they definitely want to sell Marcus Rashford rather than loan him. But obviously, that if they get towards the end of the window again and there's no hard interest in a sale, they're going to have to try and shift somebody whose wages are north of 300 grand off the wage bill, or at least get somebody else to pay part of it, which is what happened with Villa at the end of last season. Villa aren't in the financial position and obviously didn't get in the Champions League to buy him. Newcastle would be in the financial position to go near him, either on loan or buy him, if, as we mentioned before, Anthony Gordon was to go and potentially go to Liverpool. That could free up that left wing berth again.
Also, they've linked with Grealish as well. It's like a Grealish or Rashford, very different types.
We could
end
up with quite a transfer merry-go-round as well.
Exactly,
there's another Sun transfer window, ding ding ding, Sun bingo phrase for you there. We've had saga, now we've had merry-go-round. But yeah, and there's an interesting one to happen with United, because they go on tour. I think it's to Sweden next month, and Amarim's not messing around. No. So it could be. We're not quite there with nailing the story yet, but I'd be surprised if Rashford, Garnacho, obviously Anthony, and then there's Jadon Sancho to think about as well. Yeah. There could be 4 players who don't go on that tour, and that's 4 huge assets worth a lot of money. And in a squad reshuffle at Man United, these are the 4 in the shop window, and if they could shift those 4, let's say, for an average of 40 million each, you might get a bit more for Rashford, or a bit less for Anthony, or vice versa.
United fans would be going, "What are you talking about? They're worth more than that." But they're only worth as much as someone's willing to pay.
Absolutely, and they're not. And if you're talking about Jack Grealish for 40 odd million in this transfer window, then these players are in that bracket as well. And obviously
contract length.
Garnacho and Rashford are obviously pure profit because they're academy players, so they are Manchester United's priority first to get rid of, because that frees them up in the transfer window. Look, if they shift Rashford fairly quickly, and then a Sancho or Garnacho as well, they're back in the market for the likes of a Gyokeres if Arsenal don't go there, because then they've got the funds to do it. At the moment, they're treading this Jim Ratcliffe, players only barbecue tightrope of money, where they haven't really got enough for more than a sausage, and then it's but if they start to move those players on, so I think they'll force the hand of the players and the agents in the next couple of weeks, Man United, and therefore, guys, get yourself another club, because you're not wanted here.
No, quite. It's a wild situation, isn't it? Where now Anthony is the most valuable of those 4. He's gone to Real Betis, absolutely tore it up. Unlikely, almost certain that they won't be able to afford a permanent transfer.
Well, they have looked previously at doing like not a part ownership, but sort of like almost a part exchange.
You're not
quite allowed to do that anymore. But you can certainly pay. I think they were talking about somewhere in the region of 20 million euros up front, and then the rest of it in a structured deal. So
for the next 20 years.
But I mean, from a Man United point of view, if the manager's saying no, don't want him at all, and nobody else is interested, his value on the balance sheet is actually 0 or a minus, in fact. Whereas if they get rid of him for 20 million, get his wages will be tidy close to 200,000 a week.
They'll be in line with the 85 million they paid for him.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, get rid and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're Newcastle, then Dino, first of all, very quickly, Grealish or Rashford?
Oh, that's tough.
Given how they play
with Gordon, I think it's probably Rashford. And we saw some flashes from Rashford at Villa. So yeah, but why not both? They're in the Champions League. Take both lads. Play Grealish at 10 and play Rashford on the left when you don't want Gordon.
Enables them to be flexible as well. Another one that I really like this story, Dino. Newcastle, we linked him in the Sun with João Pedro at Brighton. A deal of around 60 million quid. Brighton.
They need a second striker. Newcastle, obviously, with Callum Wilson out the door. And this is not an Isak replacement, as I said the other day. I'm not ruling out Isak moving, but at the moment, Newcastle are, every time we ask anybody close to the deal, it is nothing.
150 million or nothing.
And we've not had a bid. So as it stands, where we are at the moment, Newcastle are digging their heels in. So they want João Pedro as a second striker, and that's a great option. However, you're going to tell us some more.
Well, just the 70 million Brighton want, which at first, if it was just Newcastle, you think, maybe they can negotiate to 60. Chelsea, though, having a very close look indeed, and we're going to go 3 for 3 on Sun transfer bingo terms here, looking to hijack the moon.
Brilliant, there we go. Ding, 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 another one.
Chelsea have got Liam Delap on the books, newly in from Ipswich. Nicholas Jackson, who was sulking when he got hauled off in place of Delap in their Club World Cup opener, the 2-0 win against LAFC. Delap then sets up one of the goals. does this make sense to you?
Did he sulk? Was he sulking, Jackson? Or has he just got a bit of a sulky face?
Petulant?
Some players have just got a bit of a sulky face when they come
petulant.
off. Yeah, I was never that pleased to get substituted, though, were you?
I never started. I was starting on the bench. I was delighted.
But I used to come off a lot, so I just used to get annoyed. But yeah, look, I again, Chelsea are obviously upwardly mobile, right? They've got to sort out the Mudryk issue. You know, on the back pages today, his charge is coming in, and so they're an attacker light there. Look, we know they've got a lot of wingers, they've got a lot of wide players. Sancho's obviously going out; they're not needing that. They've got a Sterling issue to sort out there as well. And that's an interesting one there if you think about it. You've got Grealish, Sterling, Rashford, and I've missed one, somebody else Sancho, who are in that Euros group, England Euros final, and all four of them sort of in the wilderness, if you like. So
on massive wages with clubs who'd rather get shot of them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an interesting one there. But yeah, back on Chelsea. If Nicholas Jackson was to be able to be, they're not going to have all three. Surely, even Chelsea aren't going to come and buy two spare number. I don't suppose Pedro's technically an out-and-out 9, but two strikers as well as Nicholas Jackson. Perhaps they're getting some interest from Jackson from Italy, because there's some clubs in Italy who are very, very out there in the market at the moment, and and Napoli being one we talked about before with the offers that are coming in. And then also obviously there's Saudi Arabian links never that far away. So I personally think that Jackson is a very good player, although he's not very popular with a lot of Chelsea fans who would definitely see Pedro as an upgrade.
Do you think, though, he's just not the level, is he? And this is what I always say, and I think lots of fans of those clubs in the big sort of four at the moment will, whenever you criticise a player, like Gabriel Martinelli is a prime example of that, of Arsenal fans who really get their back up if you not have a go at them, but say they're perhaps not at the level. And that's sort of how I feel about Nicholas Jackson. No, but you've got to compare these players with how good their clubs want to be.
Absolutely right.
And where they think they should be. I think
that's really perceptive. And that's where I think if Chelsea are thinking next year they're title contenders, then an upgrade is necessary.
You need a title-winning striker, don't you? Yeah.
And look, I mean, there's maybe another day we'll be debating about whether Pedro's that player. But I think I think Delap is really high quality. I couldn't agree more. Really high quality. And I actually think he's an outside bet to be top goal scorer this year. So
really?
Yeah, I think the number of chances that they created last year, Chelsea, that Jackson didn't score. If you've got Cole Palmer feeding the ball through to you, a dozen times a game, you're going to score goals, and the level that Delap is, and he is, as you say, you talk about ceilings, he has got a very, very high ceiling, and we're not anywhere near his potential yet. But and what I like about João Pedro is Brighton have had 3 different managers in 4 seasons, and he's played a kind of different role under different managers, and is very, very adaptable. He could, if Chelsea have a few injuries and they maybe 7 injuries and they're a winger short, then Pedro could play wide as well. So
who does he? I'm struggling to sort of figure out who he suits more, though, Newcastle or Chelsea, because I understand it at Chelsea, because I think Liam Delap is a considerable upgrade on Nicholas Jackson, and I think they're cut from a similar cloth in as much as they're quite rambunctious and physical and all action, sort of the more boisterous sort of striker, where João Pedro is so mercurial, he's sort of nippy, he's lively, he's more of the Florian Wirtz
and also he can lead the line a bit like Isak does, where he'll come short and then go down the channel. So he probably, if he's looking at being in the understudy, he's probably the understudy to Isak. He's more suited to that Newcastle system, but not that a player his level's thinking about going there as a number 2. He'd be backing himself to go and knock anybody out.
All right. So,
but I think it gives Chelsea another option. That's what I was going to
say. Frame it this way, right? So, if we're assuming it's Delap or Jackson, probably Delap when he's fit, and it's either Pedro and Delap or Pedro and Isak.
Yeah.
Which duo do you think is more formidable or tactically works better?
I think probably.
I ask that because I haven't got a clue.
I just think Isak's such high level that any 2 with him in it is absolutely top class. But I just think that one of the problems with Chelsea last year, we're going back into tactics exposed here rather than transfers exposed, but one of the problems with Chelsea last year is that when the tactic worked, it was brilliant. But when teams stopped it, they struggled to have that plan B, and then you'd get a very frustrated Palmer.
Yeah.
He's plan B. Yeah. He is the one that you're going to play interchanges with, rather than Jackson being the ball over the top or the ball down the middle. So look,
the route one from Levi
he upgrades your squad, whichever squad he goes to, definitely.
Totally. 3 years left on his Brighton deal at the moment. 10 goals, 7 assists in all comps last season. Brighton fans will certainly be sad to see the back of him.
Yeah, and then we see Chelsea again with the next one. Yeah. Jamie Gittins is I'd say we
formerly Bino Gittins.
Yeah, formerly Bino Gittins, now just Jamie Gittins apparently. But he's another Dortmund profit margin, which they seem to be incredibly good at doing.
Yeah.
Jadon Sancho, Jude Bellingham, now Joe Bellingham down there as well, and then obviously Gittins as well. So it looks like Chelsea are fairly close to doing this one. And again, I said this the other day, but I mean, I'm a fan of the Bundesliga. I've been over to watch a few. I watched quite a lot of it, and
he's so much better.
He's electric.
Yeah.
He is electric, and I obviously Mudryk didn't play much last year, but there's this sort of, obviously Jadon Sancho is no longer required by Chelsea
or Dortmund.
Absolutely. And then you've got Noni Madueke, you've got Pedro Neto, and if you add him to it as well, again the options, can play both sides, can play off the front. He's a burst player, I think is the best way to describe it. You think the game slows down a little bit, and then bang, off he goes.
7-year contract reportedly agreed.
Another Chelsea.
Exactly. I say reportedly. There's 55 million is what Dortmund want for him. Chelsea's latest bid rejected was in the region of 42. 20 years of age. He came off the bench for Dortmund in their Club World Cup opener against Fluminense. What's it for Premier League fans watching or listening to this? What sort of player is he like? Who would you compare him to if they haven't seen much of him?
A sort of out and out winger, and I think
a bit more of almost an old school 4-4-2.
Yeah, but it'd be a bit unfair to compare anyone to Bukayo Saka. But he I would say he's in that sort of mode. He can play with ball to feet. He can play balls in behind, and as I say, he's quick. So look, I actually think he's a. I would imagine part of his thinking of wanting to move now is, without going too much into agent niceties, is that he fancies his chances of getting in a World Cup squad next year.
Yeah.
And if you come to a Premier League team at the top of the Premier League and you get in the team, I mean, not everybody is Jude Bellingham level, who is going to be. Will have the whole of Europe watching them if they play for Dortmund. You do improve your chances of getting in those World Cup squads if you're playing in the Premier League, and that's great, isn't it? Young, ambitious player who wants to be back in the Premier League or in the Premier League. And look, I think I said this about Liverpool the other day. I think they're doing some unbelievably good business. Chelsea aren't far behind if they pull these off.
No, well, first of all, on your England point there, I don't hate it at all, given that Thomas Tuchel has already displayed he doesn't know what he's doing with wingers by picking Noni Madueke over Jared Bowen.
That's another bit of SunSport bingo, Jared Bowen.
That's Will Pugh bingo, I think that one, yeah. But I don't hate it. And also I think with Chelsea, it feels like, same with Jackson, right? They've got a lot of players who are good, promising players, but it feels like most positions in Chelsea's team, bar Palmer's, Cole was obviously a bit of a mainstay.
Casado's class.
Yeah, Caicedo and Enzo. All of the rest of the position kind of feel like they're up for grabs most weeks.
Yeah, and also could be upgraded. That's really, harsh on young quality players. But I think it's fair to say already that Maresca's identified where, look, if they could keep Reece James fit, then they've not got a problem there, have they? Cucurella is obviously an international quality player, but the centre-halves, Colwill's going to push on, probably a future club captain. But you're right, they've identified these 3 or 4 areas where they can improve quite quickly. And look, they've got Champions League football to think about as well. Not quite resting everyone in the Conference League as they did last year, and having players they could almost just have a Conference League squad, It
does feel like all the teams who are in the Champions League this year are sort of doubling down on staying in it. Do you think then, Dino, I'll say this one quietly, because I'm perhaps starting to believe that it may be true that everyone who relentlessly mocked Todd Boehly and Chelsea's transfer strategy when he first came in, giving it the old short-term pain, long-term gain line, is there a few people sort of gradually lifting their shirts over their faces and hiding?
Yeah, I think so. But we mentioned it there. It's Champions League. You get in the Champions League and the purse strings relax because you guaranteed that 50, 60 million quid, plus your gate receipts, and all the rest of it that goes with it. So, yeah, I'm still not sure. I mean, as I said, we were talking about Mudryk there. What was that, 80 odd million quid?
Yeah.
And, probably about 20 million a game he's got so far, hasn't he? So, I think jury's still out on that one, that's fair to say.
Yeah, fair enough. Could they be in the title race this season?
Yes.
There you go, Chelsea in the title race. Well, that's it for another episode of Transfers Exposed. We'll be back, Dino and I, next Tuesday. Hopefully some deals get done over the weekend, a few in the offing. And as Dino said, keep your eye on Manchester United. Few rumblings going on there. Plenty we'll be able to talk about this time next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let us know what you think in the comments if there's any transfers you want to cover. And we'll see you next time on Transfers Exposed.